Hello, welcome to the Centre for Brexit Studies YouTube channel. Today we're joined by our researcher David Hearne. So David, the government are pledging to provide 30,000 new traineeships to get young people in England back into work as fears around unemployment increase. So how important are traineeships then in dealing with the impacts of COVID-19 on employment?
Well, I mean, the evidence suggests that young people are typically the hardest hit in recessions of this type. I happened to graduate into the last major recession, into the 2008-2009 financial crisis. So I've seen this. I've been part of this firsthand. And there's lots of evidence of scarring effects as well. So people of my age group, for example, have earnings that are several £1,000s on average lower than they would be earning in the absence of that. So they earn less relative to their age than both those of us who are older than us, of course, but also those who are younger. So people who graduated 5 or 6 years later, once the recovery had started, are typically on a better trajectory than we are as a sort of cohort. So there's a risk really for today's young people that they will see the same kind of scarring effects, and that's what we really need to avoid. Traineeships are important, but they are only a small part of that. You know, we have 600 to 800,000 young people in any given year group who will be entering the jobs market. We need to find a way of providing jobs for those 30,000. That helps if we can get all of them, which is not guaranteed. But you know, we also need much broader set of responses. So that will be interesting to see.
So Rishi Sunak is coming under growing pressure to provide more financial support, as figures showed that high streets remained quiet on Saturday despite the easing of lockdown measures in some areas of the country. So despite pubs, restaurants and hairdressers mostly reopening then, data shows that visits to town and city centres on Saturday were down by more than half compared with a year ago, and in central London alone, footfall was 75% lower than in 2019. So do you think this shows that many people are still quite wary and reluctant to go out there and spend money? And if they are, how can businesses actually survive this?
Well, I mean, yes, of course they are. There's two reasons for that. One is the risk of the virus itself. So lots and lots of people are quite rightly and quite understandably very worried about going out and socially mixing. There is plenty of evidence that this virus is still very much with us. We're seeing something in the region, we estimate, of 3,500 new cases per day in England. So that's a significant number. There seem to be about 25,000-ish. Again, it's an estimate, active cases in England at the moment. Obviously, the numbers for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland will be a bit different. But yeah, so there's every reason, I think, for people to remain cautious. You know, I'd point people towards recent blogs on this, amongst other things. So I think that's one major reason. The other major reason is because people are uncertain. People have a great deal of income uncertainty. People don't know whether they'll be in work in 6 to 12 months' time, and they don't know if they are in work whether they're going to have to deal with a significant pay cut. So lots and lots of people are more reluctant to go out and spend money, and understandably and rightly so, than they would otherwise be. Traditional support mechanisms aren't going to work so well under those circumstances for fairly obvious reasons. So I think what needs to happen is the Chancellor needs to start thinking about targeted support at sectors of the economy that are likely to experience longer term downturns. So, you know, let's look at targeted measures. In excess of £1.5 billion, I think, has been announced for the arts, which is a good example of that. But you name a sector, you can see it. So target that support where it's needed most.
And Rishi Sunak is also looking into radical plans to give all adults £500 and children £250 in vouchers to spend in sectors of the economy worst hit by the COVID-19 crisis. Do you think this could help give the boost that these sectors need?
I think it depends how it's spent. I would imagine that that will give a one-off boost. You know, you're not going to turn down 500 quid in free money, which is what it will look like to a lot of people. That being said, you know, you've got to be sensible about this. I don't even know how you'd spend 500. I'm sure it's possible, but you'd struggle to spend 500 quid in the pub. You know, the effects would be interesting, if nothing else. But you know, that joking aside, as long as people are worried about going out and there's a serious risk of infection, then there's something like 9 million people in this country who would be well advised to reduce or minimize their social interactions. That's a big chunk of people, and they tend to be quite well off. Older people typically have more disposable income. So we're looking at a significant chunk of people who actually, it's going to be a real struggle to get them to go out and spend. So I think we need to look at perhaps more specific targeted measures to ensure that we deal with any sort of medium and longer term ramifications of this.
Thanks for joining us, David.
Thank you.